Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to conduct a roll call, please.
Thank you, Acting Chair. Councillor Badaway.
Present.
Councillor Bateman.
Present.
Councillor Campion. Councillor Kiokio.
Present.
Councillor Crater.
Here.
Councillor Easton. Councillor Foster.
Present.
Councillor Gannan. Councillor Grant. Councillor Greenwood. Here. Councillor Yip.
Present.
Councillor Jordan. Councillor Junkin. Councillor Kaiser. Councillor Morocco.
Present.
Councillor Olson.
Present.
Councillor Redicott. Councillor Rigby.
Present.
Councillor Seaborn. Councillor Secord.
Present.
Councillor Cisco.
Present.
Councillor Sorrento.
Present.
Councillor Steele.
Here.
Councillor Villela.
Present.
Councillor Whalen.
Present.
Councillor Witteveen. Councillor Zalepa.
I'm here, thank you.
And we have regrets from Councillors Diodati and Ugolini and Acting Regional Chair Height.
And Madam Clerk, it's Marv Junkin. I am here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Junkin.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll call upon Councillor Badaway to read the land acknowledgement statement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haudenosaunee, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Regional Municipality of Niagara stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you. I am looking for a mover and a seconder, please, to adopt the agenda. Councillor Zalepa, Councillor Sorrento, thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns? If you would vote electronically then, please. And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Before we start, I'll call upon CAO Ron Tripp for the opening remarks with regards to CAO 11-2026. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to start to say thank you to Council for making the time this afternoon to discuss this critical initiative for Niagara's housing future. As you'll see in the presentation and the report that you've received, this federal provincial funding program represents a generational opportunity to secure funding for several important infrastructure projects. Council is very familiar with the South Niagara wastewater treatment solution, outflow and trunk sewer. We've discussed the need for this project many times over the last several years, and as a council, you've advocated tirelessly for funding for this critical and strategic infrastructure project across two terms. The Development Charge Reduction Program presents what we believe to be our best chance at funding to get this project built. Working together with the staff at the Township of West Lincoln, we were also able to submit an application for a group of infrastructure projects in that community that would enable growth in key areas outside the Greenbelt. While our priority is securing funding for South Niagara, and while the financials wouldn't support the funding of West Lincoln projects alone, we see a lot of value in federal and provincial governments funding both sets of these projects. Working under extremely tight program timelines, staff have worked diligently over the last several weeks to submit comprehensive, compliant, and targeted applications to the program. As has been detailed in several updates to Council through Public Works Committee in April, and most recently a series of Friday weekly correspondence memos. Tonight's package provides Council with comprehensive information and financial analysis contained within the report and appendices. Please pay special attention to the analysis in Appendix 6, which we'll discuss in closed session. In addition to our staff, our own staff, we'd like to recognize the staff of the City of Niagara Falls and the Township of West Lincoln, who work closely with our own regional staff throughout this process. The applications were submitted as a region closely aligned with local municipal applications that together will bring enormous benefit to all of Niagara. This is truly a team effort. This is a game-changing project. This program has billions on the table for Ontario municipalities and an aggressive timeline. I've never seen a federal provincial funding program designed and executed as quickly as this. We felt it was important to make sure Council has all the information you need to make the decisions needed to land an agreement and make this happen if our applications are successful. It is important to note that so far we have not heard anything from the province on our applications. However, we are eagerly awaiting some news. I look forward to the discussion this afternoon, and I will hand it over to the Commissioner of Public Works, Lisa DeAngelis, and Director of Financial Management and Planning, Beth Brenz, who will provide more detail about our application, the project, and the decisions that we need from Council today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Chair, Acting Chair, Council for the opportunity to speak to the Development Charge Reduction Program. I'd like to start by acknowledging that this is a lot of information for Council to consider today. The financial details are complex, the timelines are very aggressive, and due to the upcoming election, decision-making is not as straightforward as normally it would be. As a result, the report before you contains a lot of detail, a lot of numbers, and some very complex recommendations that contemplate a couple of scenarios. It's important that we walk through those together and answer any questions. We need Council to fully understand the DC reductions we're proposing and the funding we could receive for these projects. These decisions will have long-lasting effects on the region's finances, not just for the candidate projects themselves, but for our infrastructure program as a whole, and potentially for our 2027 budget as well. I'd like to echo what our CAO has said in thanking our staff in finance, public works, and elsewhere for their hard work, as well as our local municipal partners. When the program was announced, we pulled together a working group who over the last several months has done an incredible amount of analysis and due diligence to present the strong options for Council's consideration. Special thanks goes to Rachel Ball-Caldron, Beth Brenz, Lucia Chen, Karen Constantini, Donna Gibbs, Mike Iafredi, Roman Ivanoff, Lindsay Jones, Phil Lambert, Sahil Kakar, Diana Morelli, and Brian Wilson. In this presentation, Director Brenz and I will walk you through what the Development Charge Reduction Program is, share some details about our applications, and explain the financial implications of what a successful application could mean for Niagara Region. We will also detail the direction we need from Council in order to make this happen if the region's application is successful. So what is the Development Charge Reduction Program? Well, if you recall back in the spring, the federal government announced the Build Communities Strong Fund. And the intention of that fund was to invest in infrastructure projects that support economic prosperity, housing, and sport, as well as education. The provincial stream was announced, and that provincial stream identified $17.2 billion over 10 years for infrastructure related to housing, education, and health. The Canada-Ontario Partnership encompasses $8.8 billion for all of Ontario municipalities that have development charge bylaws. And it is intended to finance infrastructure to unlock housing. Tied to that is a request for 30 to 50% DC reduction or more. And the higher the reduction that is seen, with respect to those applications is seen as being more favorable. And it looks at funding projects with a 45-45-10 split. And we'll talk about more of that as we go through the presentation, but essentially it's 45 from the federal government, 45 from the provincial government, and 10 from the municipality. The Development Charges Reduction Program objectives are really twofold: focusing on infrastructure to unlock new housing starts, while incentivizing construction by providing DC relief for builders. With respect to the program criteria, we were advised on June the 1st about this opportunity. And so we were grappling with a very quick turnaround time for applications. The application submission deadline was on June the 19th at 10 a.m., and we met that deadline. For a municipality to participate, they need to have, first, a DC bylaw, secondly, make a commitment to reducing DCs, thirdly, contributing 10% to the cost of the project, and as well, their procurement practices needed to comply with either the federal by Canadian or the provincial by Ontario program. With respect to eligible costs, it was limited to DC eligible or growth related costs only on a project. So in other words, it would not finance stated good repair works, nor benefit to existing ratepayers or taxpayers, or post-period benefits. Those were not eligible. So we looked at projects that had a high growth component, and Director Brenz will speak to the finances in more detail later in this presentation. Projects that had a direct connection to new homes, that the assets would be owned by the municipality, that an agreement could be signed by August 15th of 2026 were projects that we looked at. And that is why we're here today. And Director Brenz will speak more to what we need from council to meet the timeline in terms of the authority that's required to execute if we are offered an agreement by August 15th. In terms of the projects, construction needs to be in by 2020, and it needs to be completed by 2035. With respect to the 3-year development charge reduction, Niagara Region has submitted 2 applications with a 50% reduction of DCs for 3 years. And those reductions will only be triggered if we are offered the funding and we agree to accept it and sign an agreement. That potentially equates to a loss of $218.5 million in DC revenue, and that is based on our best available forecasts. In addition to the $218.5 million, we also have $35.5 million in incentives that were previously approved by council. So in total, that we have the potential to offer $254 million of incentives for growth within Niagara Region when you combine our incentive program and potentially the development charge reduction program. In terms of the projects we submitted, as our CAO mentioned, we submitted an application for the South Niagara Wastewater Treatment Plant, outfall, and trunk sewer. As you may recall, we provided Public Works Committee a progress update on the South Niagara Wastewater Treatment Solution, specifically the Phase 1, which is the plant, the outfall, and the trunk sewer, on April 14th of this year. In April, we noted that we were tracking to be at 90% design by the end of the year, preparing to tender in 2027, and to be in service by the end of 2030. The timeline, as noted in April, is contingent on securing the funding and all of the required permits. As such, South Niagara Wastewater Solution was submitted as a candidate project for funding under the DC reduction program in alignment with Council's priorities of effective region and green and resilient infrastructure, as noted on this slide. The South Niagara Wastewater Treatment Solution Phase 1 also aligns well with the DC Reduction Program criteria, namely, the region's existing wastewater infrastructure in the area of South Niagara is at capacity. The infrastructure is needed to unlock new housing starts and businesses. Once the plant is commissioned, the infrastructure will support residential and employment growth, including desirable large lot employment sites, in addition to the tourism sector. And I want to note that while Phase 1 unlocks over 30,000 homes and 15,000 new jobs, subsequent phases of the South Niagara wastewater treatment solution will unlock thousands more in Thorold, St. Catharines, Niagara-on-the-Lake, and in Fort Erie. You'll note from this map that the South Niagara plant is sited east of the QEW and south of the Welland River. The trunk sewer goes up Montrose Road and then goes eastward to connect into the existing Southside pumping station. If you recall from the April presentation, the Gardner Road and the Grassy Brook pumping stations will be decommissioned when the new infrastructure is commissioned. Currently, there are over 11,000 housing units in the planning pipeline, and that's within that orange area on the map, with varying levels of approval. These homes can start coming online when the infrastructure is in service, which is anticipated at the end of 2030. Again, this is just Phase 1. Subsequent phases will unlock thousands more units in Thorold, St. Catharines, Niagara-on-the-Lake, and Fort Erie. If you also recall from the April update, we had surpassed the 30% design milestone and revised our estimate for the entire South Niagara wastewater treatment solution based on the detailed design we'd done to date and the discussions we had had at that point. And that updated estimate is highlighted here in the box in blue. Our advisors, Gemma Consulting, have been working closely with our engineers at Stantec, progressing and refining the design. But they've also recognized that this is a 3-year build. And they've looked at projecting what will it cost to construct over the 3-year period, identifying that there will be cost escalation year over year of about 4%. And this increase in cost has been reflected in the green box on the right. The second project that we submitted was one that we identified through discussions with our colleagues in West Lincoln. This second candidate project is a bundle of 5 projects, in fact, that together unlock housing starts specifically in the community of Smithville. This is an investment in the future in an area that is not constrained by the Greenbelt. This bundle is made up of 3 wastewater components, namely a sewage pumping station, force main, and gravity sewer, a water main, and a road project, which is Griffin Street. This infrastructure was identified in the region's 2021 master plan, and it has been coordinated, again, with our partners in West Lincoln. It is estimated to unlock just under 3,000 units, but again, this is a strategic investment for the future and one that will help to unlock further units down the road. Now, I'll pass the baton to Director Brenz, and she will give you the details on the financials. All yours.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, turning to the financials. So first off, South Niagara Falls Phase 1, which you'll see referenced as this acronym of SNWTPOTS, but that is South Niagara Falls Phase 1. So we did put forward the project ask of $688 million, and it's broken down between the main plant at $524 million and $164 million for the trunk sewer. The ask that we put forward was $509.828 million in funding through the DCRP program. And as noted there in on previous slides, the 10% component from the region and 45 and 45 from each of the other two levels of government. So our application for the South Niagara Falls resulted in a regional contribution of 26%. That included our 10% minimum contribution, 10% related to the post-period component, and then 6% related to ineligible costs per the program guidelines. I will highlight in the report in front of you today, Appendix 2 and Appendix 4 provide the financial details around the budget amendment, what projects are impacted, and the funding sources that we're recommending to supplement the DCRP ask. And then in relation to the West Lincoln projects, we did put forward a total project of $375 million with a funding ask of approximately $242 million. And again, the overall regional component of this project was slightly higher at 33%, which includes 7% post-period benefit, 4% related to ineligible expenditures per the program guidelines, and then a 21% regional contribution, which is higher than the 10% required. So this slide is still busy, but it's intended to summarize the 4 pages of recommendations that are in front of you for consideration this afternoon. They are quite detailed in structure to capture what approvals are needed, just given where we are in the reporting cycle and what we need authority to do to be able to move forward with the negotiation and ultimately execute the TPA. So it's kind of broken out in 2 parts. We brought forward South Niagara Falls on its own and West Lincoln, and then we'll speak to what's required overall. So the first bullet is the approval required to adjust the growth component for South Niagara. So this percentage is different than what was approved in our background study, so that does require council approval. We are recommending, based on current design work, that it is 90% growth related, so we are seeking council approval for that. Regardless of what happens in our negotiation and with the TPA. So the remaining 8 bullets are approvals that are contingent on the region being successful in its DCRP applications and receiving a 90% award. So for South Niagara Falls specifically, we're asking council to approve the budget to $688 million. So that's an increase of $327 million roughly from what currently council has approved for phase 1 in relation to these projects. I will note that there was DC debt funding approved in the original phase 1 projects. So as a result of this program requirements, we are no longer allowed to use development charges. So as much as there was already debt approved for this project, there is an incremental cost associated with that because we are originally funding it with DCs and now we have to put it on the rate budget. So we are also asking to that note for council approval of $6.5 million in incremental rate funding for the debt. And that is in alignment with council approved policy. At the time we approved debt as a funding source, we also approved the debt charges. So we are seeking council approval for those debt charges. And as noted in the report, the recommendation at this point in time is to fund those debt charges through a reduction to our transfer to state of good repair reserves. While not ideal, as we all know and are aware that we have some significant challenges in our state of good repair with water and wastewater. At this time, to keep the budget balanced, we're going to reduce those transfers to reserves, but that will definitely come back for debate and consideration with council in 2027 as to how do we build that back up in alignment with our AARI and overall needs. So we're trying to balance out the overall affordability and our state of good repair and growth. So it results in no incremental operating rate impacts in 2026, but again, will need to be reviewed as part of 2027. So for West Lincoln, we would need to increase the budget to 375 million. That's an incremental budget increase of 355 million, and that includes incremental debt of $56 million. And this is unique in the sense you'll see there's a recommendation for debt authorization for the West Lincoln project, and that's because we didn't have the debt approved similar to the South Niagara Falls, where we had authorized up to a certain amount of debt for that project. The debt charges associated with the debt ask for the West Lincoln projects are approximately 3.5 million. Important to note in this particular project ask that we brought forward, there is $70 million of incremental water and wastewater capital reserves as part of that ask. So again, in addition to the reduction of the transfer to the state of good repair reserve, we're also using the reserves for our regional portion of that project to try and balance out the impacts on the debt. And again, similar to South Niagara Falls, the recommendation would be to fund that through a reduction in the transfer to capital reserves. So we do that through the operating budget, so there would be no impact on the operating budget for 2026, but obviously would need to be discussed as part of the 2027. So you will see that there are bylaws on the council package tonight that is authorizing, if we did move forward with with the West Lincoln projects, that we would be seeking council's approval of that debt, assuming that we do move forward with the TPA. And then lastly, to satisfy DCRP requirements related to the DC reduction projects, we are seeking council's approval to implement that 50% DC reduction. So that's from March 30th, 2026 to March 31st, 2029. I'm going to get into that a little bit more on the next slide. Secondly, we need council's approval to authorize the refunds that are necessary as part of the program. So if we do move forward with the program, with the application, and we reduce DCs, we're going to have to go back and refund anybody that's paid regional DCs back to March 30th, 2026. And lastly, and most importantly, that we authorize or delegate our CAO to negotiate and execute the TPA. And we will get into further options. What's in front of you today is our recommendation. We will talk about possible alternatives in closed session. So turning specifically to the DC reduction, so to satisfy the requirements of the DCRP program, as noted, we have to reduce our residential DCs by 30 to 50%. We are recommending the 50%. Right now, we currently have 2 DC bylaws, one for everything other than transit, and then one specifically for transit as a result of the transit amalgamation in 2022. So we will, in the council package tonight, you'll also see that there's 2 amending bylaws, basically to amend the residential DCs on both bylaws until they expire in 2027. At that point in time, in order to show our commitment and ensure that seamless transition between 2027 and 2029, there's a council-approved policy through bylaw that's also on the council package tonight. So that's basically just to keep the implementation of that seamlessly. The other alternative, when we bring forward the 2027 DC bylaw, there'll be an opportunity to consider that as part of the DC bylaw too. But just because we haven't approved the new bylaw yet, the policy is just to say that that is our commitment over the 3 years to reduce by 50%. So that is the end of our formal presentation. We're happy to answer questions, which I think we're going to do from our seats.
Thank you for the presentation. And as the commissioner and the director make their way to their chairs, excuse me, we'd like to put the report on the floor. This way we can ask questions both of the presentation and of the report. So is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor Greenwood, Councillor Olson, thank you. So it's on the floor, opened up. Councillor Kaiser.
Thank you so much, Acting Chair. Appreciate it. Could we go to slide number 11? And I just wanted to get some clarity, maybe from the director friends. So if I'm understanding this correctly, essentially for the top and the bottom, so the South Niagara and the Lincoln projects, we're looking at accessing funds for those particular projects, and we would be supplying 10% of that cost. Number one, is that correct?
Director?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. Minimum of 10%, but as I noted, we're higher than 10%, but the requirement is 10%.
Okay, thank you so much. And then through you, Chair. So I'm just trying to understand how that middle one fits in. It seems like it's a different, so if I'm again, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, in this one, it's that we are offering the rate reduction for existing developments, but then the money is coming back to us through the province, so there's no net impact on the taxpayer. Would that be correct?
Director?
Through the
That's mine.
chair, that is the crux of
Yes.
this.
It's usually where I go.
I'm going to do my
Yeah.
best to answer the question. So basically, the province and the feds are saying, we'll give you X if you agree to Y, right? So in turn, we are saying we're not going to fund, if successful, we are not going to fund the South Niagara Falls projects or the West Lincoln projects with DCs. So that means we're going to take them out of our DC background study. We can't use DCs for that. In a perfect world, we would, I guess, we were saying our lost DC revenue is 218 million.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually applying for significantly more, but that is not a direct correlation to the two. So we're not, in essence, it's a flow through. We're getting the funding and then we're using it for the project. We're still not being kept whole on our DCs.
Okay, do you mind if I follow up to that? Because I'm maybe a little confused now. So would it be accurate to look at the two projects separately from that middle item, or is it all sort of a part of a full package? That's the part that's confusing me.
Yes, through the chair. It all needs to be looked at together. Really, we put forward two applications. The decision point is, do we move forward with one application? Do we move forward with both applications? But either applications, we need to meet those middle things. We will not receive funding or be eligible for funding for either or if we don't meet the middle.
Oh, okay.
We
So
have to do
basically,
the middle.
in order to qualify as an applicant, if you don't mind, Chair, then we have to provide that as a piece of the puzzle so that they will consider the funding for these, in our case, these two projects. And so I guess I'll just go back to my original question. So, I had heard some things, and I don't know if they were accurate, but so is there any money coming back to the region by offering that piece of the puzzle of the 50% DC rate? Or is that going to fall on our operating budget outside of DC bylaws? I understand that, in the future or in the next budget cycle, now when we refund them.
Through the chair, this is financially, we know we need to do this project. South Niagara Falls specifically. We know it's a priority project. We've been planning for this project. This is an opportunity to receive a significant contribution in funding. The flip side is we will, depending on what the next 3 years hold, what the impact will be on our DC revenue collection.
Based
So
on
at
that
that
middle
point in
piece.
time, we're really going to have to look at what is similar to every year in the budget. We bring forward the ask, and do we have DC reserves to fund it? Do we have debt room to fund it? So this will constrain possible future growth funded projects. I will say if we move forward with South Niagara Falls on its own, we had approved more debt than we would actually require if we're successful with this funding application. So that does, we can always, there are alternatives. It is not, we're not getting this to top up our DC reserves. I don't want to say, there is a reality that our DC reserves will be lower. We can't use one to offset the other. So there are, pros and cons to this. This isn't truly like a grant with no strings attached, but it is something that will be mutually beneficial for the region.
Okay, and do you mind, I just have two other, so would
Go
it be
ahead.
fair to say then that by giving these reductions, we're going to be reducing our reserves, however, there will be less demand on our reserves because we're getting funding from the province to fund these two projects?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, you got it.
Okay, thank
Sorry,
you very
through the
much.
chair.
And then my last question would
No, it's
be, just specifically, and I'll go, sort of yield the floor and maybe come back, but so for this year, in 2026, because it is dated back to March 30th, do you, and maybe it was in the presentation of the report, but can you clearly identify me the cost rate that for this year for those refunds? Do we know that calculation?
Director?
Or maybe it's in the report, I apologize if I missed it.
Through the chair, we're in a bit of a unique situation right now because we're in this phase where it was implemented that DCs are not paid until occupancy. So we don't have great clarity as to the number of permits that have been pulled and would be eligible for that. I know there hasn't been a lot of DC activity over the last little bit, so I wouldn't suspect that it's material. I can
You could-
circle back with a number.
Sure, just about, obviously, because it's related to this, if it's more than the grant, then it doesn't make sure, but I'm assuming it isn't, but I just wanted to understand it, yeah.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, well, that refund period that we're talking about is just back to March 30th, 2026, and then really we're looking at the next 3 years, $218 million is
Right, and that's
estimated.
what I just wanted to clarify,
so
that
the-
that was that number, okay.
124,000 is the estimated refund back to March 30th. So
Okay.
it's very
And that was the
minimal.
218 number, thank
No.
you, sorry, the overall of 3 years.
Through the chair. The 124 is what we're estimating right now in refunds. If we did proceed with the program,
Right.
we would need to refund 124,000. But over the next 3 years, we're looking at $218 million in lost DC revenue.
Thank you. Yeah, that, I just wanted to be
Okay.
clear on that number of the forecast, and that's great, thank you so much, I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Chair. My question, first question is, how were we engaged in the process in the creating of this new funding model?
Commissioner? Ron? How are you engaged?
Through you, Chair, we weren't really. The province said, here it is. We had hoped to be
Okay.
part of consultation, but that didn't play that way.
Okay, do you know, through you, Chair, do you know, CEO Tripp, if other regions were engaged, or is this just the province kind of, what works best for them and the way they see of getting development done?
Through you, Chair, I'm not aware of any municipality or regions that were directly consulted in the program design itself.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I guess my concern through you, Chair, is new rules like this very strict reporting, reserve fund requirements. I, very differently, but I know how grants work and there's rigid guidelines for these type of bylaws. And it doesn't really give us a lot of flexibility. So that concerns me. I am a little bit more clear since Councillor Kaiser's questions. But I guess I don't understand how we can possibly manage a budget without DCs. And I'll go on record saying I think DCs are, some of them are an extraordinary amount. I don't know what goes into the creation of each DC to understand that model. But I think there's no guarantee that the province or the federal government will fund that gap. Is that true?
Director?
Through the chair, as I noted earlier, the province isn't directly topping up the reserves for the lost revenue. But if we were successful for both of these programs, we're well over $700 million compared to the lost anticipated DC revenue of $218 million. Really, when you have limited DC revenues depending on what we receive DC revenue for. That's always a decision point every year. So really, we're making the recommendation that this is the most important growth project, or both of these, and so that's the decision in front of you today.
Okay, thank you. So I guess through you, Chair, my comment would be that I don't truthfully quite understand how the gaps are going to be managed. That is probably going to be the issue with the next council that comes. It's not going to be something I have to deal with, but I know that we are underfunded by the province, and that concerns me. We have a $1.5 billion deficit, and I think that's going to grow. And if I'm wrong in understanding this, please do correct me, because I'd hate to be misinformed on this. But is that correct, that we're not going to be chipping away at any sort of infrastructure deficit? Should we go this route?
Through you, Chair, that is correct. As was stated in the presentation, this program is targeted at growth projects specifically and solely. So no, this, by virtue of the design of the program, wouldn't do anything for state of good repair.
Yeah, thank you. Now's the time to make comments, right, Chair? Is that correct?
Go ahead, yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll be just quick. I guess that's my biggest concern, is that while growth is important, if we are not able to manage what we have, why would we consider growth? It doesn't make sense to me. I think that's a poor way of executing a budget that involves other people's money. So thank you for your time, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor Morocco.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess the point is that this presentation is basically, we don't really have much of a choice. We really need this funding, because without this funding, we're not going to have, I don't see it happening in a while, because I don't know who else is going to give us money for the projects, for two. I'm going to basically talk about Niagara, South Niagara wastewater treatment plant. Is that correct? Through the Chair, to Ms. Bruns?
Through the Chair, that's correct. If we consider this project, South Niagara specifically, $688 million, if you consider the availability of our reserves and our DCs, that would be a significant amount of debt that we wouldn't have room for in the foreseeable future. So the funding is a nice complement to the debt we've already approved.
So the next question that I have is that the way it's put together right now, and this package that hopefully we get the funding, what would be the impact on the tax levy? Through the Chair?
Through the Chair, just let me grab my, sorry, bear with me here for a second. I want to make sure that I get my numbers right with both projects combined. If we were successful with the funding that we have brought forward, the $741 million for both projects, the impact would be $10 million total incremental debt financing charges. But what we're recommending, so that $10 million is equal to about 5.4% on the rate requisition. So if we were to add that to the budget today, the rate budget would be increased by 5.4 million for both projects for the debt required to supplement the funding application. For today, part of the application process and the budget amendments and adjustments, we are asking that the state of good repair reserve transfer be reduced. So we're going to put $10 million less to that reserve. Mm-hmm. So that solves the problem today, but we already know that we're short on our state of good repair I think we're well over 7% what we need to contribute to our reserve each year. So this would just further add to that as part of the 2027 budget. So we're going to have to think about what that looks like going forward. And so then this is the trifecta of affordability, growth, and maintaining our existing infrastructure. This is it.
And another question is that, through the chair, the other problem is that based on that percentage that we're looking at on top of this, if we didn't get that and what we're paying right now, and I think you know where I'm going right now, is because we are paying a lot of money to try and keep very poor infrastructure functioning. At the cost that we're paying right now, it's probably going to be a good deal. Through the chair. I don't know that it's a good deal, but I mean, we have really no choice, I guess, in the matter. So I'm just trying to say, we're putting out a lot of money on infrastructure. I know we know the Stanley Avenue has been one of our major ones, and I know there's others, Welland, and we're looking at new. So I guess I'm just looking at, we don't really have much choice. The cost at the end of the day is probably going to be a lot more if we don't fix it and take on a little bit of an increase when we get that funding to build new infrastructure.
Through the chair, I think this is the conversation, right? Like what does council want to support as far as that balancing between the growth and state of good repair?
And one thing that I'm having a real challenge with is that you actually are talking about doing a refund. Right now, we are looking at, I don't know, I think the last time I looked at Niagara Falls, maybe there was like 13,000. I haven't checked in over a year or so. Somewhere I saw that across the region, there might be 40,000 applications sitting in building departments that haven't been picked up. Are those ones that are sitting there now for development? You know, we're on this one. Are they also going to be, I guess, looking at a refund? Do they qualify for a refund as well?
Director?
Through the chair?
Through the chair. So as long as they haven't pulled their permits, they would be residential. They would be eligible for the program if council authorizes and we end up with a successful TPA.
So they've got a permit, but they haven't picked it up, or the permit's been approved,
No.
but they haven't done anything. It's sitting there because there's nothing being built. Everything is kind of at the end.
No.
And quite honestly, I don't think there's much we can really do and build. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping in on the question I've already asking. But I think that we really are in a situation that without the new South Niagara wastewater treatment, that's not just going to affect Niagara, but it actually goes out across the region to other municipalities, there's no building. So there is no growth. So what the province and the feds, whatever they're looking for, growth and development, that is not going to happen if you don't come to the table and give us the funding to make it happen, because that cannot go on the back of the taxpayers as a levy. So I don't know. We're really stuck in this, you know, the sticks in the windmill, and it's not going anywhere because we can't move without help. So I don't know where the growth and development is going to go. So I don't know where those permits are coming from. Maybe I'm on, just that's my comments. Thank you, Chair. I'll quit there, and you don't have to answer.
CAO?
Thank you, Chair. Just, I did want to clarify a couple of things. Definitely, I would suggest to council that this is the only opportunity we're going to get that fits this project that's been a priority for us for many years. Clarification, I believe the councillor was referencing, and it's referenced often in terms of lots of record that could go forward but are not going forward. They're sitting in a planning department. Those typically are either draft plan of subdivision or plan of subdivision. They haven't pulled permits, so there'd be no rebates for those. They could go forward, but because of financial reasons, they have not. So they would be eligible for the next 3 years for the reduction if they do go forward, which we hope. We want the units. And just one further clarification, while this program, I said, solely is focused on growth, and this certainly in South Niagara project is almost entirely about growth, it does actually take pressure off of existing infrastructure as well, primarily in Niagara Falls, but also in subsequent phases further down in Thorold and St. Catharines and potentially Fort Erie and Niagara Lake as well. So it's not sucking and blowing. It's all about growth, but it does, and I can't quantify exactly the offset at this point in time, but it is helping to alleviate some of the pressure on that side, which is underfunded as well.
Thank you. Councillor Redcock.
Can't get my mic on. Must be, guess that's a message. So it sounded like sucking and blowing from here, Chair. But that's the second time I've heard that Fort Erie somehow is connected to this South Niagara wastewater treatment plant. Hadn't heard that until today. So what is the connection and how far down the road is that connection?
Through you, Chair, and this has been touched on, I think, in previous presentations about the project. It's not currently in the design, but because of geography and the nature of this particular plant, there's potential down the road to bring in Fort Erie to this plant, a portion of Fort Erie or all of Fort Erie at some point. It's being designed in a way that ultimately could be expanded to that kind of capacity, but it's not currently, it's certainly not part of this application.
Right, which was my understanding. We have an Appendix 6 to the report, which is closed session. And is it staff's understanding that the province will be negotiating? My understanding is that the province is simply going to process these applications and then tell each municipality what they're prepared to give them. Is there some suggestion that there's an opportunity for negotiation?
Through you, Chair, that is the indication we've gotten. Largely, it is as the councillor stated. This is what we're prepared to give you, but we understand there to be some flexibility in terms of negotiating to a better number.
So what part of Appendix 6 is actually confidential to the extent that we're going to have, if we don't get the 90%, I presume then the suggestion is there be some negotiations. Are we concerned that the province would know some bottom line other than 90%?
Through your Chair, that's correct. We've done the sensitivity analysis to know what number, the lowest number that still makes sense financially.
Okay, so I'm not going to flog that horse, but I question whether that's really closed session information. Councillor Morocco asked the question about the impact on the ratepayers with respect to all of this. And the CAO indicated that this has not only growth benefits, but also by relieving pressure has some benefit on existing infrastructure. But the state of good repair reserve is really focused on upgrading or repairing existing facilities, is it not?
Through your Chair, primarily, yes. I mean, it, depending on the project, occasionally offsets some growth expenditure as well, but almost entirely, yes.
So freeing up
Asset
capacity doesn't provide any help with respect to the state of good repair reserve implications, does it?
Through you, Chair, directly, not likely, but it could have an impact on timing in terms of when certain investments need to be made, which helps ease sort of the pressure over time.
Slide 12 makes reference to the transfer payment agreement being executed August the 15th. Is that what we've been told? That our application will be processed at the region by August the 15th and the transfer payment agreement will have to be signed?
That is correct.
So
It's
that's before AMO.
Correct.
Okay. And looking at the bylaws, the one with respect to committing us to the DC reductions is premised on a successful transfer payment agreement being executed. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
And in terms of the financing amendments, it wasn't quite as clear to me, but I presume that's the intention, that unless a transfer payment agreement is reached, and it would only be reached upon terms and conditions that this council will approve, presumably tonight, there wouldn't be any need for a budget amendment.
Correct. Anything council would require to approve, if we're successful, subject to the confidential appendix, we would have tonight, should council approve this.
So Chair, just so that I'm clear on this, we're being asked to approve something that will become operative if we reach an agreement with the province based on our satisfaction that what they're proposing to give us is what we're looking for.
That's
And-
correct, Chair.
And the closed session provides us with the range of parameters that we might be looking at.
That's
And
correct, Chair.
So if it's not 90%, then it would be less money that we would receive, which would have other implications for the ratepayers, which would then have further implications for the state of good repair reserve, correct?
Yes. That's
But this will all be on us when we make the decision. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Sorry, thank you, Councilor Redekop. Councilor Olson.
Chair, and the question Mayor Redekop asked, I'd like to ask speak about that for a moment. That reserve was collected by from the levy, from the taxpayers, with the intention of using it to put our water system in a state of good repair. And I think every dollar of that is going to be needed. So I also have a question about, for Ms. Brenz, about debt. And I imagine you expected that I would have a question about debt. What happens to our debt limit in the region, because we're restrained by the amount of debt that we have, and what happens to that? Are we in a position to take on this much debt?
Director?
Through the chair, as the application was submitted at the 90%, there's more than enough debt room to accommodate the debt asks. As you know, we've been holding off issuing debt in anticipation that this project would be coming forward and knowing that it would be a significant ask. I think, and that's based on some modeling and assumptions with our locals, obviously. And we're assuming the South Niagara Falls would be issued in 2031, and the West Lincoln, if we went ahead with that, would be 2035. So just considering the timing of those asks, that's why we recommended the application that we did to ensure that we were within our debt metrics. So have confidence that that's okay.
And through your chair, and that your debt metrics are satisfied because of the timing of the events. Is that correct?
Through the chair, twofold. Obviously, in our modeling, we're assuming a 2 to 3% revenue increase each year. We know how much debt is falling off, being paid off. Every year we're reducing our debt payments. We haven't been adding new debt. So every year that goes by that we've been paying off our debt and not adding new debt is freeing up more debt room. And so, yeah, considering those both things and the timing of when the debt is being issued, that's anticipated that, if both projects were being issued anticipated to be fully constructed and debt issuance in the same year, that would be a different story. But given the time between both projects, it makes it more manageable within our funding or our debt envelope.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And I have a question about the $688 million that came as our new estimate. Is how solid is that, do you think? Or is that a lot of speculation in that one?
Through the chair, that number is based on a 60% design. And as the commissioner mentioned, we also added the construction index anticipated to be 4% over the number of years that it will take to fully construct this. So we're feeling more confident with that number, with the expectation of the timing of construction.
That's quite an increase over what we've talked about before. And there's got to be a mathematical equation that says at some point we're going to add $1 million to debt for every $10 million or something that we're going to add to the cost. So that's why I'm asking that question. I don't expect an answer, Chair. Thank you.
Did anybody want to try? No? We're good? You're good, Counselor? Counselor Sorrento.
Thank you, Chair, through you to any of our staff. I see that on the one slide, it does 30,973 new homes. What's the timeline on that? Through you, Chair, to any one of our staff. Is it 10 years, 15 years?
Director Morelli. You there?
Thank you for the question. So these are forecasts that I'm going to be reading out, but it's based on the assumption once the plant is operational. We know in working in collaboration with the City of Niagara Falls that there's approximately 7,000 units that are ready to pull building permits on the short term. And then in addition to those 7,000 units that are ready to pull building permits, there is approximately 23,000 additional units that are in various stages of development approvals or located within infill areas or future secondary planning areas.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you for that. Do we have a timeline, your best professional prognostication? 10 years, 15 years?
Director?
Thank you for the question. I would see within 10 years, we would see building permits being issued.
Okay. Through you, Chair, to any of our staff, the creation of 15,000 new jobs. Would there be any new assessment coming to the region in any way, shape, or form? So let's just say 15,000 new jobs. I don't know if we'd be hiring 15,000 people that live here that are already housed, or if we would need more housing, creating new jobs, and thus bringing in a new revenue stream to the region. That's what I mean, Chair. So to any one of our staff.
Anybody want to take that one?
So through the chair, I'm not entirely clear on the question, but any of the development that would be coming forward, whether it was residential or future employment, could result in new assessment. The employment lands that we're looking at are in a couple of different ways. There's industrial or manufacturing that could be coming online in Niagara Falls, as well as there's a fair bit of employment that could be developed in and around the Niagara Hospital, the South Niagara Hospital. So some of those spin-offs, and I know that the City of Niagara Falls is specifically working on a secondary plan in that area to try to capitalize on some of that assessment and that growth.
Okay, great. Chair, another question, please, through you, any of our staff. Has any of our staff done a calculation on the potential new revenue that would come in? So on the 7,000 homes and then the subsequent 23,000 homes. New assessment coming in. Any calculations on that? And I'm going somewhere with this, Chair. There's a point I want to make. There's a reason I'm asking these questions.
Director?
Through the chair, we haven't done that specific math.
Okay, that's great. So I just did a very quick calculation. And it's somewhere like in the order of, if we were to build these 30,000 new units, and if we were to get $2,500, that portion of the tax coming to the region, that would come out to approximately $77 million. Okay. The other new jobs, depending, again, just as a clarification, if we needed more housing for the creation of these jobs, it would bring in more revenue to us. So that's where I'm going with this. In addition to, I believe, what Director Lambert said, no, it might have been CAO Tripp, that it's going to open up more growth in Thorold, St. Catharines, and Niagara-on-the-Lake, because they're going to be able to build more homes there and thus more revenue coming into the region. And Chair, I'll just make my comment. I see this as a long-term investment in our region, in some of the communities that ultimately will help the entire region and bring subsequent new revenues into the region. And we have to be patient because it's going to be a 10 to 15-year bill, depending on what happens with the economy, et cetera, and all those other things. So to Councilor Morocco's point, I can't see how I can not support this. I know we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, but if we look at the worst case scenario and don't support this new plant, where does that leave us? At least we're going to get a return on the investment, Chair. And so I will be supporting the staff recommendation, and I yield the floor. Thank you, and thank you to staff.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zalepa.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So just a couple comments and then a question that gets towards the cash flow management. So first of all, thank you to the team for moving quickly on this. And, you know, I appreciate the federal government and the province working together to address the concerns that we've raised as a council and as, you know, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and FCM have been asking for more of a participatory role by higher level government in funding infrastructure. You know, is it exactly what we were asking for? No, but it is really focused on getting something that they want done, which is new housing, which is to try to, you know, combat against that affordability issue, which is just a drag on our economy. So I appreciate this. This is a really creative and sometimes you don't think government's going to be really creative and act quickly, I think, but this is a really great example of some great work. So thank you for that. I do want to just say, question, I guess, is, and I'm getting right at that really cash flow where how we're funding that gap of ours. I understand that we're going to use the state of good repair, but going forward, there's going to be obviously an item that we have to figure out. My question is, was there not a debt, was there not a budgetary debt allotment already attached to this project that we actually started picking up? And is your number now netting that out, or did you already do that? So I'm not finding something that we maybe missed, or like a little bit of money. So I guess that's my question. Did we net that out already? Director?
Yeah, through the chair, that's a great question. I was trying to highlight that in my speaking notes. So
Okay. Well, I'm a little thick, so.
No, there's a lot of numbers in this very complicated program. But when we approved the South Niagara Falls project, both phase 1 and phase 2, it was around $250 million in debt. Specifically for just phase 1, I think it was around 200 and I think it's 40 million for phase 2. So let's say 210 million. Those debt charges were funded on the rate budget net of development charges. So that is why, even though we're not exceeding the amount of debt that was originally approved, there is an incremental ask on the rate budget because we can no longer fund those debt charges with DECs.
Got it. Okay.
So
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Director. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair. Bit of clarification to Ms. Brenz. So Councillor Morocco talked about on the tax side, but this shouldn't affect tax. Should affect the water rate. And you're talking about what you answered for Mayor Zalepa. What is the effect on our rates, water sewer rates, moving forward as this moves forward? If everything's approved, it moves forward. Because now we're projected at 10% a year, which is what we've talked about for a number of years. How much more is this going to affect that water sewer rate?
Director.
my life didn't change. Through the chair. So if we move forward with both projects at 90% funding, the incremental debt charges are 10 million. And if we were to add that to the rate requisition today, that would add about 5.4% to the rate requisition.
So you're saying, once this is done, the next rate cycle will go up 15.4%?
No, I think what I'm through the chair. I think that it will be, again, a balancing act for council around funding state of good repair and funding this growth project. That's the decision point. I don't think anybody, would say that that's sustainable or affordable, but those will be the decisions. I don't want to bring this forward and say, not an issue, just reduce the transfers to state of good repair and say it's done. There's a reality to the state of our infrastructure and water and wastewater that can't be ignored, but we're going to have to find a way to balance those two asks. And there's two projects in front of you today, that needs to be considered.
Yeah, I totally support both projects, totally. We're going through the largest water sewer project in Port Colborne right now, and I thank council here for supporting that. And I'll certainly support this. I think it's what's been brought out, and if it goes through like they've said, it's a good provincial federal program that's happening. But I'm still a little stuck on it. The number you've thrown out. So we're literally starting at a 15.4%. We've got to make decisions from there, correct? Yes or no?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I would highly suggest you continue looking at municipal service corps. On our initial investigation is what we're going through right now in putting our water, wastewater that we operate in the city of Port Colborne today on the debt that we're looking at would save our ratepayers $1 million a year just in debenture payments in the interest. The interest rate we get through an MSC is far greater than what the region could get today in the debt money that you get, whether it's region debt or municipal debt. So I would suggest that for the sake of costs moving forward, that it's something that we should be continuing to look at as this moves forward. I'm just suggesting that, and I think highly suggesting that, only because as things move along, it's easier to park debt in an MSC that doesn't affect the debt that's used for everything else that this region does. And it's not going to tie up municipalities or the region in other projects aside from water sewer. But I'm saying numbers of this size will save a lot more than $1 million on ours, and ours is probably about a quarter of this, if not a little bit more than less than that, as far as numbers go. And that's $1 million a year. It's a lot of money to my ratepayers in Port Colborne. So I think that's something we still have to look at. And I know the CAOs and the region are looking at, which is a good thing, but it's something to look at because it's a lot of money as we're moving forward. So thank you, Chair.
I don't see, oh, sorry. I believe so, can you?
She cannot, but I think given the subject matter
Yeah.
will allow.
Through the clerk, it's not allowed, but I'm going to say it is important that we hear everything out and put it all on the table. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Chair, I did forget that it was council.
No problem.
I actually just wondered if Councillor Steele could just restate that 15.4%. I got a little lost there, so I just wanted to really understand what you were referring to, just so I'm clear.
Thanks, Chair. So through you to Councillor Kaiser. So right now we're projected at 10% a year. That's what we've been talking about for the last number of years. Mayor Cisco and I were able to bring that number down with proposals this year to, was it 8%? I think our water rates went up about 8% from 10. But staff still has that 10% number. What Ms. Bren's talked about is this is going to add 5.4% onto that. So that's 15.4% now you're starting at, not 10.
Okay, thank you.
Now, new council is going to be very creative in how they do all this. So anyways, thank you, Councillor Kaiser.
I appreciate that, Councillor and Acting Chair and Clerk. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm not seeing any others. Before voting on this report, there is pertinent information contained in the confidential appendices. Is there a mover and a seconder to move into closed session for the matter of a position, plan, and procedure criteria or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on behalf of the municipality under section 239 2K, of the Municipal Act 2001. The delegated authority related to the Development Charge Reduction Program.
So moved, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson, thank you. If you would vote electronically, please. And that's carried. We'll go into closed session, please. Okay. The closed session was for members to ask questions on the confidential appendices of the report. The report recommendation has been properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion with regards to the report? Councillor Redekop.
It's basically to delete paragraph 5 of the report recommendations and substitute the calling of a special meeting if the region receives a grant proposal of less than 90%. Keyboard's on fire? She can cut and paste. I need a seconder for that.
I look to Councillor Olson and Greenwood. If it's friendly, then we'll do it that way. Okay, that's great. That's friendly then. Thank you. Was there anything else, Councillor Redekop, with that? Okay. Councillor Kielkeel.
Thank you. So just some clarity. I know there's a lot of numbers thrown out this evening. At the end of the day, and I think Councillor Still mentioned it, we're seeing, again, a 15.4% increase in water and sewers. Am I correct there? Is that my understanding?
Through the chair, just to clarify that number, that's looking at our forecasted water and wastewater multi-year budget plus any incremental debt charges. But there is a decision around how much we're putting into our state of good repair. That's not to say that's going to happen, but if you did all of the ARI plus this incremental debt charges plus the forecasted base increase.
It could be more than.
It could be that, but we're saying, there's a decision to be made by council as to how much are you investing in your state of good repair versus your growth.
Okay. The second question, and my last question is when we talked about the 90%, when will we get that grant money? Will it be in the beginning? If approved, are we going to see that money in the beginning or as we move along the 3 years? By the province, I'm assuming.
Through the chair, that will be subject to the TPA. The project guidelines have outlined some requirements around milestones, like a certain percentage of completion being hit. So it's definitely not something that we're going to get all on the front end. I foresee it to be received as the project is completed.
Oh, that's interesting. So if we don't build as many homes as projected here, Do you want to, are we not going to see the total amount at the end of that 3 years?
Through the chair, that would definitely, I don't want to speak for our CAO but we would always make a decision for what's best for Niagara. Tying that TPA to the number of housing units would not be anything that staff would recommend, given the uncertainty around those housing units materializing.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see anything else. Any others that want to say anything about regarding this? So the report, it's been moved and seconded, and it's been amended. Last call for any further discussion. Okay, I will ask you to vote electronically, please. Okay, that has been carried. I'm going to ask Councillor Morocco, will you move the bylaws, and Councillor Woodaving, will you second the motion, please? Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Redicott.
Just want to reiterate that these bylaws are subject to the eventual approval of a proposal from the province for the development charge reduction program.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
If there's no other discussion, I'll ask that you vote electronically, please. This is carried. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you, everyone.